Talk to me about the book, MAGA Doctrine, and your relationship with Trump and his ideas. I mean, as late as the 2016 Republican National Convention, I think you openly said that you weren't necessarily sold on Trump. And yet, for the last 4 years, you have gotten to know him very well, his sons and his doctrines, and now you write this book. Can you tell me about that whole evolution of who you are?
Yeah, of course. Post-convention, I was all in for the president, and I traveled the country with Donald Trump Jr., and I put a lot on the line, and I was heavily criticized for my advocacy of Trump during the 2016 election. I traveled nonstop with Donald Trump Jr. I fetched his diet Red Bulls and his diet Cokes. I took his selfies, with him. And
what made you want to do that? Like what?
I'm sorry?
Like who were you in 2015, and what made you make that switch at the convention to go all in on them?
I want to be very clear. I don't think it was a switch. I was for Ted Cruz. I was for Governor Walker as someone who was a doctrinaire, three-prong, three-stool conservative. And I was never anti-Trump, but I was skeptical that a businessman from New York that once donated to Planned Parenthood was going to be the greatest pro-life president in American history. The convention comes. It becomes abundantly clear those of us that love America have no choice. So I go all in, like many conservatives did. And I advocate vociferously for the president and for what I believed he was going to deliver for the country. And he wins in a surprise election. And you have to understand that during that 2016 election, going as all in as I did for President Trump post-convention came at a price. I mean, I was getting calls from people saying that I was making the biggest political mistake of my life. And not you, but other people say, well, Charlie, you weren't all in. And I say, yeah, it's well documented. I was advocating for Senator Cruz, but it's equally as documented that I spoke at Trump's convention and I traveled the country with his son for 100 days at a huge expense to my credibility at the time, of which I had, whatever I had at the time. And then we won. And then I got to know the businessman, Donald Trump. And then I got to see what made him tick. And then I got to look at him in the eyes. And then I got to travel around with Jared and Ivanka and Eric. And I saw a sense of urgency for them that I hadn't seen from anyone else before. And mind you, this was 22, 23-year-old Charlie Kirk, okay? And I saw a sense of urgency from the Trump family that said, the country's on fire. We believe that we can be part of a movement to save it. And I loved that. And I was all in. We won. And then my advocacy and my commitment to the president doubled, tripled, quadrupled to exponentially when I started to see a guy that every decision he was going to make was under this matrix. What did I say? And that's what I'm going to do. I said, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this before, especially for someone at the highest levels of the American government. And I talk about this in the book quite honestly, of how the president then all of a sudden became the most conservative president for those of us that care about the lives of the unborn, those of us that care about our Second Amendment rights, those of us that care about immigration, those of us that care about that. All of a sudden he started to check those boxes in a way that no one else could and fight for the forgotten man and woman and bring dignity to the middle class. So I write about this in the book, that there's a doctrine behind this, that there's a philosophical base for it. And the book is done unbelievably well. It was #1 on Amazon for a couple days, and we couldn't have dreamed that happening. And the reason being the reason I wrote the book is I was watching some of these cable news shows, and I was watching MSNBC, and I was watching CNN, and I was tired of people telling me what the president believed. I said to myself, you hate him. You hate everything he stands for. Why are you telling me what he believes? I actually have gotten to know him. I've spent time with him. I've traveled with him. That's not what he believes. His modus operandi is our country is being screwed by a group of bipartisan elites that don't represent the best interests of America. I'm going to try and fix it. That's the story of the MAGA doctrine. And he's done a phenomenal job of it.
What's he like behind the scenes?
He is the most honest person I've ever dealt with. He's magnanimous. He's wicked smart. He's hilarious. He never forgets anything. And he's one of the most generous people I've ever dealt with. He always asks me, how can I help you, Charlie? Most politicians, it's the other way around. They're almost begging, hey, can you offer something for me? For the president, it's like, how can I help you, Charlie? What do you got next? Is there an event I can speak at? Is there something that, I need to know about? And then that's the other part of it. He's incredibly inquisitive. He treats me like a subject matter expert. a kid from Chicago who never went to college that started the grassroots army on 2,000 high school and college campuses. He treats me with as just the same amount of respect as someone in their 70s with a PhD from a college campus that's been studying something as specific for years. And so that to me is something that is worthy of unbelievable respect, and my loyalty is very, very well documented to the president because he's unlike any political leader I've ever dealt with.
And yet most of the media would convince you almost the opposite of everything you just said about him. And they make him out to be almost the opposite of everything you just said.
Well, they've never met him. And that's the other thing, is that the media, we are now trusting our description of a leader of the free world of people that have never spent extended time around that person. And isn't that amazing? And that's why I wrote this book. I said, look, I haven't served in the White House. I haven't, but I've spent more time with him than most. And I don't like trading on that. I actually don't like talking about it very much because there's so many people that have made that kind of like an industry thing. And I think it's kind of gross, to be honest with you, because I think a lot of that should be kept in confidence. And I think a lot of that you're trusted with it. But now I feel compelled to defend him when people say that he's all these awful things. I say, have you had a meal with him? Like, if you had one meal with this guy, and if you haven't, shut up. Because I have, and I know the truth, and you don't.
Is he going to get reelected?
Yes. And I paused because I don't like making huge commitments because things can change so quickly. But as things are today, yes. I mean, obviously, I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that happens. And I say yes because of who he is and how hard he is to defeat, and his commitment to being able to adjust in real time, and also who we're currently running against. I have fears, though. I have fears that they're going to make the most brazen attempt in voter fraud in American history to try to defeat him. I have fears that the tech companies are going to try to get in the way and alter him from being able to get his message out. And I have fears that the media is going to turn into a complete and total multi-billion-dollar propaganda arm of the Biden campaign.
Right. So those are still very real, those possibilities. Because when you look at when you look at Biden, you think, wow, this isn't much of a competition, but it really isn't about him, is it? There are so many other forces at play here.
No, it's not Trump versus Biden. This is such an important point. It's Trump versus their entire infrastructure. It's Trump versus the leftist machine. And so it's Trump versus the left. It's not Trump versus Biden. It's Trump versus the deep state. It's Trump versus the bureaucracies. It's Trump versus the editorial room at CNN. It's Trump versus the moderate Republicans in Kennebunkport, Maine, and other undisclosed locations that hate him so much that they would much rather a Biden presidency than Donald Trump. So it's Trump versus the power system. And it's not Biden is just a puppet. I mean, he's in fact, we should actually be honest. We should be thankful that he's so easy to attack and he's so mentally transient that actually the representative of that very malevolent and dark power system is someone as flawed as that. I mean, we should be thankful that they didn't nominate a Manchurian candidate style Brad Pitt that is so well coached and telegenic that represents that entire power system better. The fact that it's someone as corrupt and unpredictable, I'm going to be very nice right here, unpredictable as Joe Biden, who tells people that they're not black if you don't vote for him, that's a blessing from God, quite honestly. Like Barack Obama is my point I could use. I mean, Barack Obama is right out of central casting. I mean, if Barack Obama wouldn't have been president, he would have ended his career and he would have starred in a Universal Studios film. I mean, the guy's got a smile a mile wide. He's very good on camera. It's like Gavin Newsom prior to his decibel level sounding like Bane from Batman, where you can't listen to Gavin Newsom without just understand whatever happened to his voice. Anyway, that's a side issue. But that we should be lucky. So, yes, it's Trump versus the left. It's not Trump versus Biden. And it's even more than the left. It's all the systems that are behind that. It's this interlocking machine. And we have an infrastructure too, but it's nowhere near that. Oh, my gosh. It's nowhere near that. But the one thing that we do not have, we have two things they don't have, the people and truth. And because of that, I hope we win.